Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the IAA Malaysia UiTM Brands Matter Future Leaders Series webinar. This event is an initiative of IAA Malaysia and is the first ever among all IAA chapters in the world. For an introduction, I will hand you over to the Exco for Education in IAA Malaysia, Sheikh Hamimda Agil. Mim, over to you.
Hi, sorry. Thank you for the introduction, Prabha. Hello, everybody. Hello to all panelists and to Prabha. Okay, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. So I would briefly introduce everybody to our panelists today. We will start with our moderator. Okay, our session today will be moderated by our honorary secretary, Mr. Prabha Nayar. Okay, and our moderators are including the first one is Professor Dr. Muhammad Adnan Hashim, Professor of Advertising from Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, UiTM. We also have John Chako, our President, IAA Malaysia, and also Adjunct Professor, Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, UiTM. We also have with us today, Ms. Madiha Fuad, or commonly known as Maddie, who is a founder of Plus Vibes, a new app in town. She is also our alumna and also currently finishing her PhD at Taylor's University. And joining us as well is Miss Dewi Sribayu Nordin Selat, who is currently doing her PhD at Faculty of Communication and Media Studies in Branding. Okay, so without further ado, I will pass this event to Prabha Nayar, our moderator for today's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mim, for the very warm welcome. Before we proceed, I would like to introduce a video by Professor Dr. Masila Hamza, the Dean of the Faculty of Media Studies at UiTM, and she could not be at this event today. So, Gary, could you play the video of she welcoming everyone to this event?
Hello and good evening, Mr. John D. Cheko, President, IAA Malaysia, as well as Adjunct Professor, Advertising Department, Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, Professor Dr. Muhammad Adnan Hashim, Professor of Advertising, Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, Mr. Prabha Nayar, Honorary Secretary, IAA Malaysia, Ms. Madiha Fuad, MESCOM alumni and founder of Plus Vibe app, Ms. Dewi Sribayu Nordin Selat, PhD candidate, Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, and not forgetting audiences who are here with us virtually this evening. It is a great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to the Future Leaders Series webinar organized by International Advertising Association Malaysia, IAA. On behalf of my colleagues and staff at the Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, University Technology Mara, I am very grateful to IAA for your tremendous and continuous support that you have lent us over the very productive years, leading to this momentous program this evening, which I am sure that it would be of great benefit and engaging, surely. Established in 1972, the Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, University Technology Mara, has always been the proponent of the creative arts in media and communications. As such, with the introduction of advertising studies, the faculty works collaboratively with creatives as well as captains of the industries to ensure its curricula stays significant and its competitive edge locally and internationally. The IAA accreditation has opportuned the faculty a step up in tailoring courses that are innovative, game-changing, as well as time and industry relevant. This was made possible by extending networks with practitioners, closing the gap between the academia and body of creative knowledge and expertise in the industry. These efforts were made possible through matching the curricula and that of the core of advertising nature and business core. Through these accreditation, students and graduates become content creators to fill the knowledge gap and game in the fast evolving digital sphere. Ladies and gentlemen, I have learned that today's webinar, bearing the theme of Do Brand Matter in the Current Pandemic and Beyond, will be an apt touch point to our engagement entitled Brand Matter Future Leaders Series. These would be the first of many knowledge sharing webinar initiated and inaugurally hosted by IAA Malaysia. Despite the limitations of mobility and scarce opportunity to meet face-to-face, it does not deter IAA Malaysia to still be able to have us all gathered here for this virtual session, breaking into discussion that mattered this evening, that of development, challenges and ideals for advertising on brands domestic and globally. Sincerely, my heartiest congratulations to team of making this evening a success despite it all. As a faculty that stemmed itself from creativity, ingenuity and progress, we are proud to have our very own fortnight's engagement. In short, advertising has evolved beyond unusual written and visual communications. Its importance has recently understood and experimented to better business, improve the well-being of the economic sector, as well as to celebrate the diverse narrative in storytelling. The significance of advertising in higher learning institutions is the very reason why we are here this evening, to understand and learn the role of importance of advertising in marketing process under this climate of uncertainty, coupled by the pandemic respectively, through the eyes of a diverse panelist tonight. With our golden anniversary looms around the corner next year, we look forward to a great many collaborations and initiatives such as this to further reduce the gap between the academia and the industry, and so far the future is looking good. Thank you everyone and enjoy the program.
I must say that was quite a motivating, inspiring, and respectful message from Professor Dr. Masila Hamza.
Indeed.
I'm sure all of us will give us will give her a quiet applause. Okay, well, once again, welcome all attendees and the panelists, Professor Dr. Adnan, Devi Sribayu Nordin Salat, Madiha Fuad, also known as Maddie, and of course, our president, Mr. John Chako. Okay. Without much ado, I would go into the questions. Okay. The first question, okay. This is going to be a forum, so I would pose a question to a particular panelist, and following the answer or the insight given by the particular panelist, I would or may ask insights from the other panelists. Okay, the first question: in the ongoing pandemic, opportunities for interaction between brands and consumers are severely impacted. In this scenario, how can brand owners retain the relevance of brands to the business, the consumers, and the economy? I would like to pose this question to Prof. Dr. Adnan Hashim. Prof, could you take this question, please?
Thank you, Prabha. So to answer the question, early 2020, which is about 2 years ago, and we have actually witnessed companies and brand operators change their operations to familiarize with stay-at-home instructions by the government, or firstly, for them to stay relevant to the business, it's important for the brands or brand operators to be what we call to keep their mission and vision and values intact, this new normal. Here, they can communicate to their consumers via the various available digital media platforms now, and maybe the most effective traditional media if need be. And this is the time to prove to consumers that the brand value, the brand equity, and the company values do not change despite the pandemic. In fact, the company can take this opportunity to prove to consumers that the values they promise in their advertisements ever since do not change at all. So this is an opportunity, in fact. So the brand quality, the brand personality, the service provided should be the same despite the new normal. In short, the brand owner must not stray from its core values. It cannot be blinded by fast profit for short-term gains, because there's danger that loyal customers of the brand may leave if the promise made is not delivered. In fact, the pandemic may be the best time to serve customers the best they can, since with keeping to a consistent image throughout. We have seen many established brands doing this, in fact, and they are doing well. I mean, for example, look at McDonald's, the queue to the drive-through is still very long, yeah, despite the pandemic. Meaning they keep their image intact. So they will leave their customer base, they will realize that the pandemic is over, and I believe profits may soar higher than before if the image is kept intact. So next, it is also important for me to mention the importance for the brand staff in the business operations, as these are frontliners of the brand who best know the customer's needs and wants. So the brand owner will most likely be dependent on these frontliners to give input for them to overcome the difficulties during the pandemic in selling the brand. Yeah. So in keeping to the needs of its customers, the brand owner must be ready to also fine-tune its approach within the COVID pandemic. So this is because brand trust is a vital component of the customer-brand relationship. In fact, they can develop emotional branding. Yeah. So for instance, if there are changes, of course, there will be changes during the pandemic in terms of business operation hours by the brand operator to adapt to the pandemic. And this is very important for the brand owner to effectively communicate to the consumers so that they know of the changes fast. And this shows the care by the brand towards its consumers. That's all.
Thank you, Prof. That is quite an interesting insight. You touched on the subject of emotion. Maddie, if I may ask you for your insight. When you talk about emotion, we're talking about the connection between brands and consumers. Would you have anything to add on this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely agree with what Prof. Adnan mentioned, keeping the image intact. I was actually taking notes, and I was thinking it's so true that brand trust is a vital component. It's about that connecting in terms of trust. I think company leaders, brand managers, and even entrepreneurs like myself, we have it tough these days. I mean, when you talk about branding, there's a lot of competition, especially online, with new technology, with social media. I mean, how can you really stand out in terms of your brand when there's so much in the marketplace, when there's so much on Shopee, Lazada, and everywhere, right? But the thing is, your brand, it's heavily influenced by what your customers, your consumers think of you. And the best thing that we can do right now is to actually be so in touch and be so relevant to what your consumers and your customers need. I mean, when you talk about brands like, for example, Nike, you're talking about Apple, they're not planning for the current trend. They're planning for future trend. What do the future customers want? What are things that will excite them? And that's the main focus of it. So when you're talking about emotions, you're talking about how to retain the relevance of the brand. It's about knowing what your customers need. It's about interacting with the customers. And that's what we try to do with Plus Vibes. I mean, there are a lot of mental health platforms out there. There are different types of ways you can get mental health assistance. But then again, how do we stand out? How we stand out is we try to connect with the users. We try to create programs, different types of things. If our consumers are online, we go online, we go on social media, we do these talks. And that's how we try to connect with the consumers. And that's how we try to be different. And I think that's the most important thing for a brand, right? When you're in a very competitive market nowadays.
Oh, yes, yes. Very true, actually. When you talk about mental health, yes, it figures quite a lot in our lives nowadays. And we used to think that, okay, mental health only affects the young, but it actually crosses all boundaries. You see, there's no age where it fits in. You see, whether young or old. So, I mean, it's like, today, among the panelists, we have a spectrum of ages. So, you have the different thoughts and how it's evolved over the decades, if I may say. Thank you very much, Maddie, for that particular insight. Okay, I have a question for Devi. Okay. Consumer wallets are under pressure, from drop in disposable income to setting aside whatever possible for the unpredictable future. And I think unpredictable future is the key phrase now. So when making a purchase, is the decision down to just the price point, or is the brand still as relevant? Devi, someone at your age or your age band, how would you approach this?
Well, you see, even now we can see that it's a mix of both, actually, when you're talking about price point and brand. Because, well, first, if we talk about price is still very much important, especially for students or the younger generation, because everyone has their own budgets, their own economic situations, and for certain cases, it is still the deciding factor. So that when you're talking about price point or brand or which one is, affects purchase intentions more, it's still very broad here because there's so many situations that we can talk about. But let's say we narrow it down. Let's say someone is presented with a few products that are similarly priced. How are they going to choose between these choices, right? So, well, first and foremost, the value of the product must first be established to give people a reason to spend their hard-earned cash on anything. So we want the best quality, best choice that fits our needs and our pockets, right? So branding is what gives value to your products and your business. So if consumers think that your brand adds value to their life, they will find a way to match your price. So consumers, they won't actually, automatically gravitate towards the cheapest option, which could be good news for brands out there, because when we talk about going back to the price point, price is still a relative figure that relates to the reputation of your business. So consumers, they typically gauge whether a price is good based on how it compares to a brand's reputation. So for example, we can take smartphones, because smartphones now, they are considered a necessity in our lives. But why do people choose Apple, for example, over other brands out there? We can always argue that the capability is similar, but what makes it stand out, right? iPhones in itself, they are pricey and the price keeps going up with each release. However, we can say that Apple, they have a good branding strategy. It focuses on the emotions. They have made themselves stand out. And in Malaysia, at some point, it's even seen as a status symbol. So we can see how Apple actually progressed. And the starting point here is how the Apple product experience makes you feel. The Apple brand personality, well, it's about lifestyle, imagination. So then again, when you're faced with choices that have similar price points, um, you tend to choose, you tend to evaluate the brand and how it makes you feel, if it resonates with your values, and you will match the price. So if you can build a strong brand reputation, price concerns become secondary. And even between the young generation, you want the best out of your money, right? So you go back and forth between the price and the brand, and there's so many things where you can evaluate your purchase intentions. But I believe that brand is still very much relevant, even more so during this pandemic, to a consumer's purchase decision.
Thank you, Devi. I would like to go and pick on two particular phrases you mentioned. One is when the brand adds value to your life, and later on you follow that up with price becomes secondary.
Yep.
Okay, I think those two phrases, I won't say statements, are extremely powerful. And when you mention Apple, in fact, Apple is known to make people buy products which they never knew they needed.
Definitely.
And Apple is the only brand which is almost a religion, where they actually make their users become the brand evangelists. I mean, if Apple says they're going to launch a product on Friday at 6 o'clock in the morning, you'll find people snaking around the retail store in New York and camping the night before, and basically posting what they're doing on their social media.
Yes,
I mean, the brand, for it to get their consumers to go and do that, it's amazing, you see, without even paying them, you see. So, John, I would like to go and ask you about these two particular things. One is brand that adds value to your life. If that happens, price becomes secondary. Could you add value to that value statement, please?
Sure. I think realistically, we are in unprecedented times, right? And it would be unrealistic to think that everyone can stand by their ideals about brands. It's kind of horses for courses, right? Either you do without, or if you can't, you find a way to find a product that fits your budget. We are in quite unprecedented times, right? Now, but regardless of socioeconomic levels or financial predicament, everyone would want to purchase products that sit under a reliable or reputable brand, right? For better functionality, for better quality, for better safety and image. So there is a desire for that from everyone. But it depends on the category. Yeah. And as I used an example before, like during the pandemic, in a high growth sector like gardening, everybody started doing a whole lot of gardening, right? As I did as well. I think it's more likely about price and not about brand. I think its functionality is important, but it's about price. It was for me because I ordered a whole lot of plants and accessories for my miniature home garden, and I didn't consider a brand. All right, it was through a marketplace platform, and brand wasn't a consideration. But there are times when brand is, because brand value is important. And a case in point is this set of headphones that I'm using right now. Right, I could have got one on Lazada or Shopee for 35 ringgit. And instead, I paid 150 ringgit at Harvey Norman because the functionality was important. I didn't want to go into one of these and find it doesn't work. But the cheaper item had a whole lot more functions, more colors, and more things he could do. But I needed the assurance of a guaranteed performance. So it wasn't about image in this sense. It was about the assurance of performance, because I want to deliver a brand of myself well to the audience and not have something not working. All right. Likewise, on items that are consumables, I'm personally wary of unbranded products. All right. If it goes into my body, if I'm consuming it, I want to know that the point that Prof raised before about trust, and I'll talk a bit more about it afterwards, but trust is a strong currency right now. I need trust in the brand or the maker to do the right thing, right? There are a bunch of fake products out there. There's recycled gloves, poor quality mask, and you got to be wary of these things. You got to be smart about these things. But if it's about items that affect your health, that needs reliable and guaranteed functionality, then brand is of the utmost importance. I need to trust the brand. I need to trust the maker to do the right thing by me. So again, it's horses for courses. There are categories where price, convenience, and choice matter more than the brand. And so that's how I would sum up that question of yours. Yeah.
Thank you, John, for giving me goosebumps by mentioning recycled gloves and masks. Okay.
Well, it's real, huh? It's
yes,
real.
yes, it's true. It's true. People profit whenever there is, whenever there's a bad time. Yeah. Okay. The next question is for Maddie. Okay. Pre-pandemic, online shopping was a choice. Now and post-pandemic, online shopping will continue to grow by leaps and bounds. E-commerce platforms, the likes of Shopee, Lazada, tend to focus more on pricing and less on branding. Okay. Question, how do brick and mortar brands compete in this environment? And do they join the bandwagon or stick to their guns while continuing to invest in branding? I would like to have a young person's perspective, because I think they spend most of the time ordering from their armchair. My wife complains and says that every 2 days she's got to go and sign something for one of my daughters. They get deliveries and she gets stacks of packages on the dining table. So maybe you would like to give an insight on this.
Sure. Well, before the pandemic, actually, I was not one to do online shopping. I like the experience that you get when you go into a store. I like seeing, feeling, touching the actual product, seeing if it works on me, reading the labels if I'm in a grocery store. That was the kind of person that I was, because online shopping was still very, not to say new, but you didn't need it because you were so used to what you've been using and going to the shopping mall before. But because pandemic hit and everyone was in lockdown, I tried it out. I tried to go on Shopee. I registered for the first time last year, also Lazada, and I tried it out. And again, it was about price for me. I was like, wow, I didn't know that if I could purchase, pizza sauce, three pizza sauce at a discount, that kind of thing. It was all about price. That it was so competitive, like everyone was selling everything online. So then, if you're saying like, should these brick and mortar brands go online? A brand that I was so loyal to, is Estee Lauder. And they're about the shopping experience, the retail experience. They, things for you to try, free gifts, everything was about how they conceptualized and designed the whole store. And that was what I liked about it. But they also went so big in marketing on Lazada and Shopee. Even bigger, I would say. They gave freebies and different types of things that they never gave in store. So what they did was they actually shifted. They shifted from that store experience, and they knew they had to go on that bandwagon and be in that online marketplace. So it's about being relevant to your customers' needs, because right now you can't go to the store. I mean, during lockdown, you couldn't, right? So what they wanted to do to keep the customers from switching brands with all the other opportunities and things that they will now definitely see and be exposed to online, they had to switch. And they went all out in terms of that kind of freebies, doing different kind of online experience. But there is a way that brands can retain and keep that kind of retail experience. Something like what Sephora does. Although they do have the online website, that the customer experience in an actual store is very different. how they treat you. And this is especially in overseas where, Sephora, they do like some kind of shows in front of their shops, they try to retain people like that. So I think it's very different. And another way that retailers can also benefit is by being faster than the online market. When you're purchasing online, what you typically have to do is you have to wait 2 days minimum, maybe. If you can reach your customers before that, then that guarantees that you'll be able to win that kind of marketplace, right? How I learned about that was through Mac. I wanted to purchase something from Mac City, I think. I was thinking, should I go on Lazada? Because they are on Lazada. But typically, why? Why would these brands still want you to purchase directly from them? Because they don't want to get that, commission cut or an extra fee charged to them. So they would still, it's okay. They called me and they would just say, it's okay, we can send it to you within 3 hours. And I was like, wow, okay, I'll go with that. So that's how they beat the market, the online marketplace. So those are two ways. It's customer experience in the actual store, and it's beating how fast you can deliver the products.
Maddie, you mentioned about Estee Lauder.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Origins, which is a brand under Estee Lauder, they tend to appeal to those above 40. But what happened was during the pandemic globally, they began to try out strategies to go and appeal to those below 30. And they actually did, and it was actually quite a success, you see, and they themselves were quite surprised, you see, because they tried to go and differentiate the brand and, okay, this is for those above 40 and then, and now it's actually has got great appeal to those below 30, Some say that the price point is a little bit high for those below 30, but the fact that they have been a success online, the younger people find, okay, I think I'm going to make this my brand, because it falls in line with my values, and that's how they've been going ahead, and they've been a major proponent in the cause of climate change. So that has resonated with the younger group, So it's true, Maddie, when you say people, those who have preferred to go and shop in brick and mortar stores, because it's an experience, you see, you can go from it. It's not just I'm going to the store, I'm also walking around, seeing the kinds of people who are also buying the same products as me, or who are not buying the same products as me. And online, it gives you a different thing where you can actually shop faster, scout faster for brands and products, and look at prices, and you can compare prices faster, So yeah, that's a pretty interesting comment that you put. Prof. Adnan, would you like to go and add to what Maddie has mentioned about the difference between shopping at brick and mortar stores and shopping online? This
is my view, to this issue. I think brick and mortar brands should join the bandwagon, like Shopee and Lazada and the rest, because they need to compete and in fact, it may be to their advantage because they have their in-store sales at the same time compared to Shopee and Lazada, which are only online. So in this way, they get the best of both worlds compared to their competitors who are just confined to online shopping. So these physical stores actually can utilize, like I said, various social media platforms to promote events and interact directly with customers. I must also add that, again, brand value and pricing are very closely related. A certain brand should have a certain, this means the brand owner must not compromise on the price of the brand just to increase sales. In fact, the price set by the brand owner should be equal to the perceived status of the brand, especially for high-end brands. or you call it a luxury brand or something like that. So again, the keyword is brand trust. If consumers have a strong trust to the brand, the price becomes secondary. That's my take.
Thank you, Prof. Adnan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, John, this question is right up your alley. In an era
Can I add to the one about e-commerce and platforms?
Please do, John.
Yeah. I think we have a fair bit of time. Brands have to decide how they want to engage and develop their delivery infrastructure in keeping with the consumer's needs and understanding their consumer's path to purchase. What is a consumer's path to purchase on a certain product? Do they want to be part of a marketplace platform, or do they want to create their own facility? Right? Do they want to create their own e-commerce facility? Some brands may not want to be in the e-commerce space at all, which I think would definitely be a limitation. Certainly, if you create your own e-commerce facility and infrastructure, you have control on how your brand is positioned and to the consumer rather than a marketplace platform. All right. So let's take the example of LVMH. Right. And would some of their brands go onto a marketplace platform? They do have their own. They do have their own portals where they can control the experience. They have their stores so that they are multi-channel touch points, and they can maintain their brand story much better by having their own platform. So I think brands have to decide, do they join a marketplace platform like Lazada or Shopee and many Alibaba and so forth, or do they want to create something of their own where the brand and the product is such that they want full control of the customer's experience all the way through the path to purchase, right? So that's an important decision for companies to make. I know some brands under LVMH who have decided they'll create their own platform and provide the convenience of delivery to home. They will have other touch points such as stores where people can touch, feel, and experience, and even try, and even return products that did not meet their expectations. But they will also have a platform to deliver to homes where people can order and have it delivered to them directly, rather than relying on other facilities. So those are options that brands have, and they need to choose which way they want to go. Right?
Okay, John, you mentioned about LVMH. To my knowledge, very few brands are as protective of their genuinity than LVMH. And I think Maddie may actually correct me if I'm wrong, but if at all you bring any LVMH brand fake product into France at the airport, they have a right to take that item from you, and I think to go and arrest you, I think, because they're so protective of their brands and the genuineness, you see. So John, in a situation like this, how would LVMH go against, I would use the word go against, I won't use the word compete, but go against platforms that sell fake LVMH products, which are 1,000,001 platforms I myself have seen, you see. So I'm just wondering, how do these brands marshal or monitor such activities?
I think having the right brand protection strategies in place, you got to invest in those strategies. Somebody like a brand like LVMH, a corporate like LVMH, which during the pandemic, by the way, the owner of LVMH, or the majority owner, for 3 weeks was the richest man in the world.
Yes.
Right, for a 3-week period, he beat Elon Musk and right. Gates and so forth. Right, they do invest in brand protection, which means having the right facilities to identify where fake products are out there, finding them, enforcing the removal of those face products and prosecution of people who promote fake products. And I think that's an important part of the strategy for a brand like LVMH. It's just like you have functions like marketing and advertising, product development, quality, you also need a strong brand protection function. And that's what people like LVMH do. You can't control it all when there's so many platforms that are opening all over the place, but make people aware, have your own platform so people know where they can go to get genuine products from the LVMH portfolio. And I think those are the things they got to do, but make people aware. Don't be shy about making people aware. There are fakes out there. People know it. It's no damage to your brand to be honest and to say they're out there. We don't condone it. We'd rather you buy through our platforms where we can guarantee, whether it's through any one of our touch points, where we can guarantee you that it's a genuine product.
Devi, you mentioned about brand value. Would you have anything to add on this?
Well, when it comes to brand value, and then we were talking about Shopee and Lazada, right? For me, I see Shopee, Lazada, and all these e-commerce platforms more of an added bonus. You see, a tool that eases and it makes it easier for people to view your product. But I also agree with what Maddie has said earlier, because sometimes people prefer the brand experience offline, and online is just not the same. But this goes a lot for big brands, brick and mortar. But I think during the pandemic itself, we can also highlight that there are a lot of businesses that is sprouting. They have started during the pandemic itself. So they don't have retail stores, and there's no way for you to experience this. So how do they communicate that brand value through social media, right? Through Lazada and Shopee. But what I can see is that Shopee, Lazada, it's just more of a platform to make it easier for them to choose and deals with the transaction process. But the branding itself, the process of creating brand value itself, happens in other more interactive platforms. We can see now it's more towards Instagram. And also, I would also like to highlight TikTok, because it's a very, very new platform and mostly dominated by the younger generation, but it is booming. It helps a lot of businesses grow, particularly those who are homegrown, home-based. So when we highlight the smaller businesses, I think that in itself is also a good case study on how they can grow their business and showcase that brand value online without even, people cannot test their products, they cannot try, or any of all those things, but they are thriving. And I think that is also another aspect that we can actually look into further right now.
Thank you, Devi. Okay, John, a question for you. You have spent time in leading marketing positions for Coke, Kraft in Australia, New Zealand, in North America, in Western Europe, in Africa, South America, Middle East. Okay, so you have seen how consumer behavior has evolved over the past 3 decades. Okay, in an era of more societal consciousness, i.e. employee rights, climate change, diversity, equality, etc., brands with global presence are navigating towards being politically correct. Okay. Question 1, what will happen to brands who are not aligned to these new values? John?
Right. I think we need to really look at what is important to people right now. The manifestation of that may be different depending on where you are, but there are some fundamentals. People are really taking a look at who we are and what we value, all right, in different ways in all around the world, because this pandemic hasn't discriminated about where it touches you. It's touched the entire world, and people are saying, look at who we are and what we really value in life. I think we're discovering a better version of ourselves and leaving some room for growth. right? Community has taken on a much greater meaning. As I said, the manifestation is different, maybe different, but at the end of the day, the core is that community has taken a much greater meaning. People are shifting away from this hyper individualism that used to consume us and reorienting our lives around people and the community, right? The other major change that's happening in the world, I mean, it's been there, but it's now taken on much higher prominence. I mean, trust has taken center stage, and I think every one of the panelists today have mentioned trust in one form or another. Trust is center stage for consumers. So if I refer to a report, it's the Edelman Barometer 2020, right? In a special report on brand trust in the coronavirus pandemic. It was conducted across 12 countries, and it firmly revealed that 60% are turning more and more to brands they trust, right? So the question then is, what is trust? Is it about quality, ingredients, after purchase service, authenticity, warranty, peace of mind, and the like? Yeah, it's all of those as well. But trust has also led it up to a bigger space now, right? Where consumers tend to have greater, or people tend to have greater affinity and loyalty to brands that are brave, right? And stand up for the truth. Stand by their consumers and actually act in accordance with their published values and beliefs. They got to act in line with that, that published purpose statement that's in the boardroom and so forth. You got to live and act by it. And that's what fosters trust in consumers. Okay. Consumers want brands to stand for what matters. So then you got to have a finger on the pulse of consumers. What really matters? Put people before profits. I know it's a big statement, a tough statement, but you got to put people before profits, right? And care for the environment. Right? It is out there. It's latent. It's in everybody's minds that there's something screwy going on in our environment right now, and we don't have the mental space to think about it. But there's something going on, and there's something bad going on. So they want brands that care for the environment, care for the oceans, care for privacy, coexistence of man and nature. I mean, you could say in a way this pandemic is a cause of the lack of coexistence, but who knows what the cause is, but it's in that space. And the whole area of diversity, equity, inclusion are important to people. And it's at different levels, yeah? But these things are important. So trust comes when a brand understands what is important to consumers beyond the standard price, quality, design, availability, promotion, and so forth. Brands have to win the respect of consumers to build trust and equity and loyalty. And so trust is really the new currency. In fact, the latest report that came out of Edelman was very telling, and I have it here. It says that trust in technology, media, government, and institutions is declining. Around the world, it's declining. Trust in businesses and brands are strengthening. Wow. So consumers trust businesses and brands more to do the right thing by them. Right? And this is across 12 countries. I'm not making this up. This is an Edelman study. In fact, 68% of respondents said that it's more important to trust the brand I buy or use than I did before. And this figure is much higher for a younger consumer. 75% said it's important that trust is there before I will buy something. So I guess to build true brand preference and loyalty, they need to have the finger on the pulse. Brands need to have the finger on the pulse of the consumer. And as to what really matters to people and focus on building a trust surplus. You need a trust bank and a trust surplus with consumers. So don't just think now and the transactional mindset right now on how I transact, but think if you got a brand that you want to maintain, and you got to think about building that surplus for the long term to be able to survive this.
John, before we proceed to the second part of your question, there's two things I caught on. One is that brands they trust, and trust is the new currency. I would like to ask Maddie, okay, in particular, brands they trust. Trust is the new currency. How is this critical to Plus Vibes? Especially when it's something that is, I mean, you can't get any closer than mental health. Okay, Maddie.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Okay, in terms of brands and trusting and how it applies to Plus Vibes, right?
Yes.
Okay, so for us, it's about anonymity. It's about anonymity, the things that you share on the platform. It's completely secret. And how we gain that trust is actually by having a 24-hour chat service. So after 24 hours, what happens is that your chat is completely deleted. It's closed. Right. It's not saved. It's not backed up on the cloud. And that's how we gain the trust. So we have a disclaimer before that. When you request this chat, what it's for is for you to really just share whatever you're feeling on the Plus Vibes app, to really share your struggles, to know that you have that kind of support system. But don't worry, after 24 hours, or if you close a chat, it will be completely deleted. And that's how we build that trust. And that's why people are like, oh, okay, actually the reviews that we've gotten is that, wow, I can actually share some of my deepest, darkest secrets that I can't share with anyone because I feel shy or embarrassed, or I don't want people to judge me, because mental health is a very sensitive topic. So it's very difficult to get people's trust in that sense, because it's probably something that they don't want people to know. It's something that they are silently struggling with. I mean, and the thing is about Plus Vibes is that that was what I was going through. I mean, last year, the reason why we developed Plus Vibes is because I was going through the exact same thing that some of the users are going through right now, that I couldn't open up. I was afraid to tell people. I was afraid to share what I was feeling. So what I felt was so important was for me to be able to trust whoever I was talking to, that they would comfort me, they wouldn't judge me, they wouldn't share with anyone that I know. And that's how we build that kind of trust.
Mary, when you mentioned, when you mentioned that Plus Vibes is a brand that they can trust, especially when it comes to mental health. See, by actually trusting this brand, they can actually lighten their burden, and they know that whatever they are whomever they're confiding in with, it would not be amplified outside that realm. Yeah, that's very important. Like what John said, trust is the new currency. Okay, John. Now to the second part of the question for you. Okay, some brands are embracing, like you say, employee rights, climate change, diversity, equality. Okay. And this is more than a trend, and it's being really a genuine practice. Okay, do you think consumers will notice this, or will they think it's just a passing fad to get connected with that brands wish to go and get connected with consumers, like for the recently held COP26 from 31st of October to the 12th of November in Glasgow? You had everyone plus his pet dog, walking in protest. You see, some of them had no idea what they were protesting about, but holding up a placard, they could actually go on Instagram themselves and think that, that they are standing for something. So how important is it to a brand to continue what they embark upon? Like if I embark upon fighting on the causes of climate change, I can't 2 years down the line start using fossil fuel in everything,
right,
this kind of thing.
right,
Yeah.
right,
So,
right.
I can't, it's not just at the heat of the moment, you see, or when it comes to equality and diversity, it can't be just, oh, they're talking about the Me Too movement. I better hold up my hand and say that, yeah, I'm together with this, but that's not what I'm practicing, you see. So how important is it to a brand Like for example, today, if I may say, the brand Australia took a big knock, because it was revealed that sexual harassment was not just a one incident that was widely reported, but they said that it is manifested in the operations in the parliament, and it took a lot of people by surprise. I just read it on BBC this afternoon, So how important is it to go and carry on something that you embark on, so that consumers don't look at it as, oh, it's just a fad, but it's actually a part and parcel of you. I think, John, if I may just say, those days, when we were given jobs to go and develop corporate profiles and websites for clients, they would always tell us, hey, you must do up a very good vision and mission for us. When we ask the client, what is your mission and vision? You think of something, but it must look nice, must read nice, so that people think we are very great. So it becomes fluff, you see, John. It becomes fluff, you see. But they don't even live up to what has been written there. So, John, from your experience, please add on to this.
Yeah, I will. I mean, this is an interesting topic around kind of textbook articulation of purpose and sound bites of purpose that just don't cut it anymore. All right. And it was honest, I got to tell you, the younger consumer will call out bullshit if they see these sort of statements. And they will. They have no hesitation to do so, right? And so they should. So if you're going to write a purpose statement and set down your values to check the box, and if you can't live by it and stand by it, and everything you do is in adherence with that, you're going to lose it. People are going to see it eventually, right? And you're going to lose that respect and the trust of the consumer. And I mean, I'll give you one example, which I was personally very impressed by. Everybody knows the brand Nike, of course, right?
Yeah.
So when George Floyd was murdered by a police officer, which was the catalyst for the Black Lives Matters movement, guess what Nike did? And Nike had this iconic line, just do it. And we all use this in our day-to-day lives. We say, come on, just do it, right? Just do it. Don't overthink it, right? And Nike said, for once, just don't do it. And they changed their line across all of their mediums and all of their material. For once, just don't do it. Now, how brave was that? For once, just don't do it. So brands need the courage to take a stand on what matters, not just to show that we too understand what's going on, but genuinely as part of their values, they need to take a stand on what matters. This mattered to Nike, mattered to their purpose, their values, and their beliefs. All right. Nike had the depth of purpose and the courage to stand by its values. And that is extremely important. And consumers will not forget this. All right. I mean, there was backlash against it, but they had the courage to say, this is what we believe in, and this is the course we're going to take. So for once, just don't do it. Right. And I thought that was terrific. That brings me on to another incident here. When a derogatory racial statement was on social media about Malaysia's badminton player. Lady's name was Kisona, all right, after her loss to Japan, all right. The Badminton Association immediately said, hey, this is against everything we stand for. There's no room for racism in sport. The question I would ask is that, what did brands do? What did the supporting brands or sponsoring brands do or say? Now, if they did say something, I haven't heard it, so I don't know, but I would have expected brands to have stood up and said, this is sporting goods brands. This is not part of our values and beliefs. And that did not happen. All right. So these are some of the examples on why you got to stand by your purpose, not just a textbook soundbite articulation of it. Don't just stick a CSR initiative in there because it's checked the box. Make sure it is deeply endeared into your organization, and make sure that your values and beliefs, you live by it all the time. Because if you don't, eventually your consumer, the people, especially younger consumer, will call out bullshit. I can assure you that will happen. It's only a matter of time. Right.
Okay, John, on this issue of equality, okay, and diversity, there have been many Fortune 500 companies, and among the largest companies in the world, HP, PepsiCo, they have had female CEOs. Okay, now when Mary Barra in 2014 was made the chairperson and the CEO of General Motors, who were at one time one of the largest motor company in the world, quietly there was a lot of unhappiness, because they said that, okay, a motor company like General Motors is supposed to be a male petrol head's a seat, okay? But till today, not only is she the CEO, she's also the chairperson of the board, okay? Now, of a motor company like General Motors, okay? So how would you say that that has actually, I wouldn't, okay, like you say, because you can say that there's this glass ceiling, but it's broken the glass ceiling. Yes, it's happened with Hewlett Packard, it's happened with PepsiCo. But with a motor company, especially like General Motors, how much does that add to the brand value of General Motors as a company and its philosophy?
Yeah. I think it builds a lot more trust in the brand, not just because they put a certain person in the job, but because they pick the person, they put somebody in there who could do the job, who is qualified to do the job, and it didn't matter what their race or gender was. They picked the person to do the job, and brands will appreciate it. They'll say, this is a company that's real. This is a brand that's real, that understands what's important, that stands by their values, stands by their diversity and equity and inclusion principles. And I think that's huge kudos to the brand. But you shouldn't just do it to just because that's the trend. You should do it with heart. You do it with empathy. You should do it with compassion, and do it bravely, and do it because you believe in it. I think it's great for the brand when you have a depth of principles like that.
Thank you, John. Yeah. Okay, that's quite illuminating, actually, coming from your experience. Okay, I've got now the next question. I would like to address it to both Devi first, followed by Maddie. Okay, depending on the category, the key indicator of a brand's health can be sales figure, its market share, its reputation, and its brand value. Okay, now I think that before you were born, Devi, Maddie, when you mention about a brand's health, it's always, oh, it's got this kind of sales every year, it's got this kind of market share, but now it's not necessarily so, you see. Okay, are these the same barometers today, or have they shifted during the pandemic, or have they evolved over times? Give me a perspective from a younger generation and the millennials view. Devi, you first. How would you, what would be the indicator of a brand's health? Is it the sales figure, its market share, its reputation, or its brand value?
Right. Well, I would say personally, for the brand itself, and I think most businesses, sales will always be an indicator for a business to sustain. But they should also check on their brand awareness and brand reputation among the public. Because I am on social media a lot, I grew up with social media and whatnot. Right. So I would like to highlight another point is that a brand's health can be dictated through your brand reputation online. So a lot of brands now, I think they know the importance of social media. But there are certain things that we don't see them taking note of. For example, doing media monitoring, not just traditional media, but on social media. Just like John mentioned just now, the younger generation will call you out if something is wrong. So the younger generation, they love voicing out their opinions on social media, their experiences. They love to share, and they share this across platforms. So you need to check your brand health on these social medias as well. Well, there's going to be loads. If you're a big brand, like Nike or Apple, you are going to get loads and loads and loads of experiences and content from the general public. But you can actually filter this and see what needs to be improved in your company. It's not just in terms of customer experience, but it could be your product, and even like the previous question of societal consciousness. If you're doing something wrong, they will call you out and they will tell you their opinions on it, their experiences. And because now society is literate and everything is knowledge based, and this comes from intellectual mobility, right? So education encourages intellectual mobility, and in this sense, intellectual mobility is our ability to adapt and act in new situations. So life changes and we need to adjust ourselves to the new environment and respond to new things. And part of it is also societal consciousness, and this happens with because we are more informed on certain situations and whatnot. So I think right now with the internet, we have a lot of platforms and I would say tools for us to actually check our brand's health, check in with your consumers. You can't just be looking at things from your perspectives. You really have to dive deep down and see what are the reviews, what are things that people want, because sometimes what we think people want is not actually what they want. And I think that's
Very good
one
point.
important aspect that businesses need to highlight nowadays.
Maddie, would you like to add on that?
Definitely. I mean, I definitely agree with what Dewi said, but in our case, right, a brand's health is mainly dictated by loyalty. Like, how loyal are your customers to you? And it doesn't even mean by purchasing your products. It's if you launch a campaign, will they participate? Even if you're giving freebies, right? If you're launching a campaign, if you're going for a social movement, if you're doing any kind of activities, how active, how engaged are your customers? And I think that really says a lot about a brand, because you can go for a social movement, like John mentioned, or you can go for any kind of campaign and see whether your customers, your consumers, your users are really engaged in it. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to mean about revenue, about sales, about pricing. It has to be about how much your consumers believe in your brand and believe in your value and what you're trying to achieve. So for me, I think it's more of brand loyalty that would really measure a company's brand health. Yeah.
No, Mary, it's true. You see, and also Devi, actually technology has played a great part in that in this part of the architecture. I mean, technology has changed so much. I remember some years ago, when my daughter came into my office on a Sunday, and she saw something by the site there, and she asked me, "What is that?" And I said, "That's a fax machine." She said, "What do you use it for?" I said, "To send documents and all that." She said, "Why can't you just use email or WhatsApp?" So I thought, instead of explaining it to her, I think I will end up, I would keep my sanity if I just did not explain it to her. I said, okay, it takes too long. So technology has really transformed a lot of things. Professor Adnan, you have written a book on advertising. If I think you are the first Malaysian to write a book on advertising. Now, when we talk about the key indicator of a brand's health, during the 70s, even the early 80s, it was always about sales figure and market share. Do you think that has now evolved or transcended into its reputation and its brand value, and those things are equally important?
Okay, in my opinion, to answer that question, I think it is still relevant, but after 20 over 30 years or so, times have evolved. There have been a lot of changes. There are more and more brands in the market under the same product category. So we depend on how consumers think, behave, and act on it. Basically, I think it's more of the future. Yeah, the future is for sustainable brands that again has a lot of customer trust as its most important obligation, with the brand developing itself to solve problems and give attention for all, especially in these days, with more and more young people into social media and so on. They are more aware of what's going on around. They are more critical. We cannot simply, brand owners cannot simply take for granted. So this brand should also work together with the right entities and innovate in the public interest. And also, I must mention at this moment of crisis, and post-crisis that we are facing, the people want brands to maximize their potential and keep everyone safe, and guide them. And brands would be dependent on whether they act in the interest of their employees or other stakeholders and society at large. This is related to what Mr. Checo mentioned a while ago, to strengthen their expertise, their leadership, and their trust. And of course, via this, they can greatly reinforce emotional bond with the consumers. So I think it's the keyword here is there must be emotional bond. Brands must start with why, like Apple, how Apple became successful. There's a model, I'm sure you all are aware of it, on why what brand compared to many brands that fail because they start with what. That's so basically successful brands of the future must be able to prove that they put people, not profits, first, and they will definitely get the profit. They put people first, and they must respond with compassion, and make a difference. This is, to me, the true test for purpose-driven brand leader. Brands like Apple, Tesla, Nike, why they are successful? Because I think they know that the people are to deliver, and they deliver.
Thank you, Prof. Adnan. John, okay, when it comes to brands' health, okay, you were intimately involved with Coke around the world. Coke has been a sponsor of the Olympics for the past 1,000 years. It's also been a sponsor of the FIFA World Cup for the past 1,000 years. Okay, and those two events really boost the sales and market share of Coke. Okay, but in this day and age, John, how do you think would be more acceptable measurement of a brand's health, by not just by the consumers but also by the board of directors, because board directors used to be very much concerned about numbers, you see, but now many of them are also in tune with societal behavior, you see, John. So maybe you would like to add to this.
I mean, the traditional, call it KPIs of a brand are still relevant. I remember it's plastered all over my head. It is sales volume, it is market share, and profit. And these three indicators, and there was also another one called brand health, and there were a few attributes under that. So whenever I had to do my reports and present, I needed to present this. And many brands, especially global brands like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Kraft, which I've been associated with, are listed on the stock exchange, all right? And their shareholder interest matters, right? So this may seem to be short-term and transactional, but they do matter. A custodian of a brand has a responsibility to many constituents, including shareholders. So there they want to see these metrics of volume, share, and profit growth, right? Now, there are, however, other long-term brand health indicators that has to be considered, and I don't think it's been given enough prominence right now. Because it's becoming, I think it's biased quite transactionally to those earlier KPIs. Tracking over time of a brand, whether it's maintaining or strengthening its relevance to consumers is important. Right? Do people see your brand as a brand of choice? Do they see it as a brand that they want to be associated with, as a brand that understands me, a brand that fits my lifestyle? And brand that believes in values and has strong values. Now, I mentioned earlier about trust being the new currency. I think trust has to become a strong brand indicator, KPI. Okay, not just a shallow definition of trust, but getting underneath what are attributes that ladder up to building trust. Because where does the brand sit on the trust spectrum has to become a KPI of brands, whether they are large brands, global brands, or small brands. They need to develop a trust spectrum and to say, where does my brand sit on that? Okay. Consumers want brands that stand up for what matters, put people before profits, as a number of people have said before, care for the environment, care for oceans, or privacy. Data protection and privacy is right now a really important issue, right? And coexistence, nature, and obviously the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So there should be a trust barometer, a trust brand health indicator against brands. And I don't see anybody having done it. And they should call it just that. Where does my brand sit on trust? So you need to build a trust surplus as an important indicator of your brand's health.
Thank you, John. Okay, that's quite interesting, especially from a global perspective, and it all comes from experience. Okay, I have a question from one of the attendees. Her name is Layla Khalid, and I would like to pose this question to both Devi and Maddie. What are your suggestions for local brands to survive during the pandemic? Generally, people will opt for international and established brands due to brand trust and loyalty. Maddie, maybe you would like to go first.
Advice for local brands. Okay, so I'm assuming Layla is an entrepreneur. Let's assume Layla is an entrepreneur starting up her own brand, perhaps in a very competitive market where there are international brands as well. The thing about brand is that brand is like your personality. It's like as if we're all humans, right? We all have different personalities. What stands out is what makes us different, how unique we are, what we're basically focusing. So that's exactly the same thing as your business. There are a lot of same products in the market. When you talk about essential oils, when you talk about anything, there are different types of brands. But what makes you unique is you need to find something that is your unique selling point. Focus on that. Focus on something that you only can sell, your social value, your something that you alone can contribute. And I think that will really make a big difference. Because again, in a competitive market, it's not that you can't compete with international brands, it's that you need to be different. And it's just like us as human beings. See it as business, same like humans. How do you market yourself in the industry? What's your unique selling point? What is your personality? Similar to a brand. I mean, I'm speaking from experience in terms of I started doing business since I was 24 years old, 8 years ago. I started as a food truck, actually. And again, there are so many food trucks out there. How is I supposed to be different? what I did was I chose a different target market. I chose corporate companies and international schools specifically. So that's one way that you can leverage, focus on a unique target market. Then we went into cafe, trying out different things. So I think the main thing is about finding unique selling point, finding your own personal business personality and focusing on that and targeting that, because I think that speaks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, Maddie. Coming from an entrepreneur yourself. Devi, would you like to add?
Yes, I definitely 100% agree with what Maddie has said. And Layla, was it? Yeah,
Yes.
I actually really love that question because I like to focus more on local brands. Because contrary to popular belief, branding is not an expensive marketing tactic that only big brands can use. And branding is actually heavily influenced by the market that you are in and the level that you want to play at. So just like Maddie has said, you have to find your unique selling proposition and you have to focus on that, really channel that. Because right now I can see maybe last time people are more they trust international brands. Okay, let's take skincare or makeup because it's proven. But I think nowadays we have already shifted into wanting to support our local homegrown brands. And I would like to also highlight that right now we can see a lot of the younger generation students, fresh graduates who have started their business, especially in the past 2 years during the pandemic. And they know how to communicate with their audiences. So when you find out what your values are for your business, you have to know how to communicate with your audiences. And I think the younger generation, they are good at that because they are adept at using social media. They make engaging content and they take the opportunity to create that brand awareness on social media. So with all these resources that we currently have in this digital era, we can see that a lot of the young entrepreneurs, young generation, they are applying what they have learned into their businesses. They have taken what they see and want as consumers, and they use that to fuel their branding, to fuel their marketing products. So to add what Maddie has said, I just want to add, you have to use your resources, communicate with your consumers. And I think the younger generation definitely have that potential and advantage because you're good at navigating the dynamic trends that is happening right now while showcasing your products and values. Like I mentioned earlier, I did mention TikTok, and I think TikTok has become a good platform for local businesses to actually tap into the current market to convince the current market that they are as good as international brands. So I have seen, because I'm on TikTok a lot, okay, and I see that local brands, they are very good. They show their R&D, they share their packing, they highlight consumers, consumers' perspective, experiences, and they actually take this into consideration when creating their content, marketing strategies, or even when they are formulating their products. So I agree with what Media said. Branding, is more than, sorry?
Okay, Devi, sorry, I have got to interject here because
Sorry.
you mentioned something about support homegrown brands.
Yes.
Okay, now, because this dovetails into another question, and this is from Khairul Muzamil, who asks, what brand owners need to do to ensure consumer satisfaction towards the goods that they produce? Because there was this thing that, if it's imported, it's got to be better than local.
Yes.
But that's not necessarily the case. And especially we need to go and support the local brands, you see. So maybe you could answer Khairul Muzamil's question, and Maddie could add to it. Devi?
Well, how we can convince people
in terms of satisfaction
of the goods that are produced. Yes, I think one of the advantages that homegrown products or businesses actually have is that we are more in tune with our current market. So like I said earlier about brand health, you have to do social media monitoring, talk to your consumers, brand owners can do that as well, because right now we can see there is a trend going on where CEOs of company, they are the brand ambassadors of their brand. They actually post questions on social media and get consumers' perspective. And from there, you can actually gauge the satisfaction that the consumers have. This thing, it's very dynamic. You have to really work hand in hand with your consumers. And I think again, the advantages of homegrown brands is that because they are, well, relatively small compared to international brands, they can really capture that market. They can really do that. They can really, find out what the current environment is, the current experiences, and how they can improve moving forward.
Maddie, would you like to add to that?
Exactly what Dewi said. So it's about capturing the market. The thing is, the perception or mindset that people have is that if you're a local brand, man, I can't compete with international brands. But it's not that, actually. It's actually that when you are a local brand, you are more in tune with the local market. So we even see international brands trying to adapt into the local market, right? You see McDonald's suddenly coming up with nasi lemak and all these kind of things. What are they doing? They're trying to tap into the local market. Similarly, as a local business owner, what you have is you are so in tune to the local market demand. So leverage on it. So if you're an entrepreneur creating different types of food products, leverage on what the local market, you know what the local market wants. You see a lot of these things like cooking. When they do blended bawang or halia, that doesn't cater to international markets. That's actually to Malaysian markets specifically, because it simplifies all these housewives, what they're doing. So I think in terms of a brand, a local brand, it's not that you should compete with international brands. You should identify what is your unique selling point. What is it that you can sell, that you are so in tune with the local market, what they need. Focus on that. And I think that's how you can really be at a complete advantage rather than a disadvantage.
Great answer, Mary. Okay, there's another question which I think both the young panelists should also answer. This is from Muhammad Hamzani Muhammad Izamuddin. Can a collaboration with a social movement promote brand awareness and visibility, especially during a pandemic? Maddie, why don't you take the first attempt on it?
Definitely. I mean, first-hand experience, Plus Vibes was part of the White Flag movement. So actually, we were the first. Well, one of the first. I'd say when it went live on social media, I think 1 or 2 hours we picked it up, and we actually created that whole online platform. You need food donations, you want to donate, you need food help worldwide, we will ship it to you using Lazada, Shopee. We were quick to be part of that. And because of that, we also got a lot of free media coverage. So these kind of social movements, once you're quick, agile to adapt, you get that kind of exposure. Suddenly from having to pay for media, traditional media coverage, we got it for free. And people are like, hey, Plus Vibes is offering this kind of services. And people are like, wait a minute, what is Plus Vibes? And then they start looking into the website. They start saying, oh, okay, they're a mobile application company that has mental health. Oh, okay, they're also providing mental health, you know? So that kind of social movement, the White Flag movement, we went on ground to give food donations. We got a lot of donations. We provided those food. It's how you show that this is a social enterprise company that is doing something for the people. I think that's something that was so close and so relevant to the pandemic.
Thank you, Maddie. Dewi?
Yes, again, Maddie has said it perfectly. I think when you collab, again, like when we want to collab with NGOs and social movements, just like we were talking about societal consciousness just now, it has to be in line with your brand values. It has to be something that is congruent to your core values and what you stand for. It just cannot be any kind of social movement. But when brands find the correct social movement to join, I think it is very, very beneficial for them. It creates brand awareness. And the younger generation, they love this. They really love brands that care more than sales. more than just making money. They want them to be more involved with the society, with the current issues, to be, well, basically tap into the current environment that we have right now. And definitely it will increase your brand awareness, and that's what we want, because we want people to know that you are there. We want to know that people to know that you exist. And in terms of sales, that will come after that, because we want people to know about you first.
Thank you, Devi. That's quite an honest and focused answer. John, I have a question for you, and this is from Shifa Faisal. It's about how big brands that had built up brand trust and has now, I would say, that has been diluted. And in particular, we're talking about AirAsia X. What has transpired over the past couple of months, although it began about almost 2 years ago,
Right.
how has that affected what used to be a darling of Malaysia? And will AirAsia X ever be able to go and regain that level of trust with consumers, especially since they've been giving wishy-washy answers to questions from well, they're not passengers anymore. They have been labeled as creditors.
Well, let me answer that with a question. All right. What's the name of the person who asked the question again?
Shifa Faisal.
Shifa Faisal. So let me answer you with a question. When a customer books and pays for a flight ticket, only to see the flight cancelled due to no fault of the customer whatsoever, and sometimes a day after they booked it, what should the airline do? Right? Should it stick to the fine print and conditions, or consider the financial stress of the consumer and refund the ticket? All right. And I ask this from a perspective of this, when brand owners and custodians have loyalty to their customers and not just expect customers to have loyalty to them. It's a two-way street, right? Loyalty is not a one-way street, right? So what should the airline do? And I think indirectly this is answering your question as well. Any thoughts from the panelists?
Prof. Adnan.
Yeah, definitely. I would expect the airline to refund, to show that they care for the customer, for their mistakes. So that is being honest. Yeah, that's being putting trust from, that the customer must trust them, that they care for the customer, and it keeps with their concept of now everyone can fly, or something like that. Yeah.
I think there'll be a huge debate on that now.
Yeah, businesses can get into financial trouble, and we understand. You take a risk, you do things, conditions change, pandemic comes on, people can't fly, business get into trouble. And people have sympathy for businesses in this time. We have sympathy. All right. You say, things got screwed up. Things happen, right? I'm trying not to use the words I normally use in a dialogue, but it happens, right? And it happened. But if you lose trust, and if you lose the loyalty, then they're not going to forgive you, right? Because consumers will forgive, even if it costs them to forgive, because things happen, right? It's out of your control. But if you lose trust and lose the loyalty of your consumer, the loyalty they gave you, if you don't give that loyalty back to them, it's irrecoverable.
Yeah.
So with no brand names mentioned, that's the principle that I would say applies here.
Okay, thank you, John, for for bearing in mind that this is a family-oriented channel and not Netflix.
Okay.
So there's no claim on top. I'm sorry, there's no disclaimer on top to go and say that blah blah blah. It's got violence language. Okay. Okay, Maddie, on the issue of on brands I know, on brand trust, you see, especially the subject, especially the question that was posed by Shifa Faisal, you see, in terms of whether or not a brand will be able to go and reclaim its glory of that level that it enjoyed once after what has been going on or what is going on. Do you think that is possible among the younger generation?
Well, I think consumers are very much understanding. I mean, going back to what John said, there was a poll actually on LinkedIn where you had to vote. Consumers actually voted. Should AirAsia return 100%, 50%, 75%? And some did answer 50%. So they were very much understanding towards the situation. So in terms of whether you can regain that kind of trust, I think if you come all out in terms of admitting what was going on, understanding the fact that people do suffer, but then also relaying your part, I think it would provide an insight for consumers. It would make them understand better, because then again, everything is about communication. Branding is about communication. When you communicate well, when you make your consumers or customers understand what you're going through, I think consumers are very much understanding.
So 50%, that's quite far from 0.5%.
Personally, I put 100% back, but then I was kind of shocked. I was like, wow, a lot of people put 50%, so understanding.
Yeah, I guess it's better. Devi, how about you, Devi? Would you like to go and add on to this before we wrap up? It's already 9:35.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Prof. Adnan and Madhu, what she said. With that poll, I think I saw that poll as well, and I was quite surprised, that we are understanding, especially when sometimes, little things like this, it could really affect your brand. But I like how when you go through all these things, it's very important to be transparent. People understand these tough times, so you really have to go for the win-win situation here. So you have to be transparent and understanding to the consumers, and well, maybe there are some losses here and there, but in the long run, you gain that loyalty and that trust from the people. So if you're talking about your business in the long run, it's definitely more important to be transparent about these kind of things, because things about refund and is a very touchy subject for some people, right?
Yes. Thank you very much, Devi. I think that today's session, we're talking about brands matter. Sorry, excuse me. We have had different responses to questions that we posed. There have been differing answers to the same answer, if you know what I mean. That means from different angles. And I think the two young panelists have really given some pretty good insights, which I myself have gained some learnings from. Professor Adnan has given a very learned insight, and John has given a very experienced insight. I would like to go and express my appreciation on behalf of UiTM and IAA Malaysia to Professor Dr. Adnan, Devi Sribayu, Madiha Fuad, and John Chako. Okay? There are a couple of people I would like to go and highlight who have done great work behind the scenes. These include Omar Shari, the Vice President of IAA Malaysia, and Hamimda Agil, the Head of Education of IAA Malaysia, and also members of the EXCO, who have worked tirelessly to go and conceptualize this event and partnership with UiTM. And I would like to give a special call out to Gary Tay, who is the head of digital media at IAA Malaysia. He does wonders. I mean, I'm a person who gets told off by my children because I type with one finger. Okay, and you talk about multitasking in digital world. Gary Tay can put, everyone to shame. Yeah, right, he can put everyone to shame. He's amazing, So thank you, everyone, and to all the attendees and the questions posed, a great thank you. And I would like to remind everyone that sometime in Q1 2022, we would be having the second in the series of our Future Leaders Series, Brands Matter. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Yeah, if I could say one thing, Prabha, on behalf of all of us, panelists and all the attendees and everybody in the expo, thank you for the terrific moderation, the structuring of the questions, the sharing of it, and well-moderated session. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Prabha. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
John. Thank you,
Thank you all.
Mehdi. Thank you, Devi.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks all. Good
Okay,
night.
thank you,
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night.
Most
Everyone,
welcome.
Bye.
thank you.
Okay.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Dewi, Mehdi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.